wasn't so good. That wasn't supposed to happen. Oh, and brilliantly it's recording as well, so that's a fantastic start. Stay. Good boy. Right. So we've just done a brand new distillery called Kingsbarns, and we had their new make, which was very, very interesting indeed. So now I'm going to move on to another brand new distillery. A brand new distillery which is part of a very, very old brewery. Now this was actually one of the ones that I had on the tasting table with myself and Leon, with Leon at the Newcastle Whisky Festival, that was part of kind of world whiskies that were highly commended at the IWSC. And this is from a brewery called Adnams, which is based in Southold in Suffolk, and here's where it is in England, on the east coast of what I call the bum of England. And it is a brewery that's basically it's been going since there's been brewing in that region, kind of in that where the town is now, since about the 1700s, I think, if not before that, maybe even the 1500s. But the actual brewery itself, Adnams Brewery, was the brewery was bought by George and Ernest Adnams in 1872, and it's been to an extent family owned since that point. Very highly regarded brewery. They do a beer called Soul Star. The brewery itself is called Soul Bay Brewery, and they do a beer called Soul Star, which is absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favourites. And occasionally my local convenience store just up the road sells it for £1 a bottle, which is just ridiculous. And normally when they have it, I tend to just buy all of it because it's absolutely amazing stuff. It's a really highly regarded brewery, and just recently they've started, they opened a distillery. So it was 2010. 2010 they opened this distillery with a view of doing gin and vodka, and also producing whiskey. Now it interests me this because I think, and I don't know this for certain, but it seems to make sense to me, in that they saw what the English Whisky Company was doing, which I reviewed quite early on in the challenge. And after they brought across the guy called David Fitt to be their master distiller, who had previously worked for Green King as a brewer, came across, had learnt from the master distiller at Lefroy, whose name completely escapes me, somebody Robertson, David Robertson, John Robertson, I can't remember. He basically went, brilliant, I've learned everything off this master distiller, now I'm going to do it my own way, and he's doing really, really well, and he's experimenting and being very highly regarded. It's a little bit hit and miss, but generally there's more hits than misses with the English Whisky Company. And I get the impression that Adnams looked at that and went, well, we're a brewer, we're doing half the job already, why don't we move into distilling? And it gives you a whole other income stream. It gives you a completely new revenue stream where you can go, right, we've got our beers and we're already halfway through the process of going into making whiskey and gin and everything. Let's expand the distillery, let's expand the brewery, because the distillery is part of it. It's called the Copperhouse Distillery, and it's actually part of the brewery complex. Let's move into distilling. We're already halfway there, so it's not too much of a jump to get into distilling. We can release a gin, we can release a vodka, and then when we get to 3 years, we can release a whiskey. And we're going for a completely different market that's not totally different, because beer drinkers tend to be whiskey and vodka and gin drinkers anyway. So in terms of a business, it makes sense for them to do it. What you can then do is, once you've matured your whiskey in the casks, you can then go, right, what we'll do is we'll now have beer that's been transferred into whiskey casks for 6 months, then you've got like this whiskey finished beer, and then you've got another revenue stream because you've got a whole new line of beers to do. So it wouldn't surprise me if in the very near future Adnams will be having a range of beers that have been finished in whiskey casks, because it makes sense for them to do it. So this particular one is not their first release. They started distilling, they were distilling in 2010. I'm going to say no, I think it was slightly afterwards, so 2011, because I think it was 2014 when the first release came out, and they called it Adnams Number 1. So it looks like this. and it's a single malt. It's 100% barley from East Anglia, which is that area of Britain, and sorry, England. They also have a number 2, which is called triple grain. So it's not a single malt because they're using barley and oats and wheat, but again from East Anglia. So that's their number 2 version, but number 1 is their single malt. So it is 43%, and it's just over 3 years. So it's from my recollection of my notes from when I was doing the festival, it was 2 years in new French oak barrels, and then a year in bourbon casks. I'm fairly certain it was bourbon casks, but I could be completely wrong. Probably am, because so far the tastings I've done this week, there's been something wrong in nearly all of them. So I'm on a roll of going downhill. But I'm pretty certain that was the case. But they are using new casks for the majority of their maturation. French oak for the number 1, for the number 2, they're using American barrels. So it's a young whiskey. You're looking at about 45 to 50 quid for this, which for such young whiskey seems a little bit steep, and that was kind of the feeling when I was at the festival. Was a lot of people were expecting it to be a little bit less, but they've got quite a big name behind them, so that puts a premium on it. It's an English whiskey, that puts a premium on it. It's brand new, that puts a premium on it. You know, you can find justifications for having that price. Now, I didn't try it at the festival. This is the first time I tried it because I had a dram to do that night, and I've already made the rules for myself that I can't have more than a certain amount of units per week, and I had to get a train home and everything like that, so I wasn't actually sampling anything on the day, so this is the first one for me. Whoa, that's... foisty is the wrong word, but there is a really odd... There's leather on there, really. There's leather, but there's also kind of a farmyardy smell, a bit like a Pinot Noir. No, leather's definitely coming through now, and it's like new leather, like a new car smell. But there is this backbone of it's kind of a farmyardy character. It's not manure and anything particularly unpleasant, but it is slightly vegetal. Leather's the dominating. Yeah, leather is definitely the dominating aroma, and it's new leather, like new car leather. Very smooth mouthfeel, and again leather comes through. Leather on the palate, which is a bit weird. Now it's turning into fruit. It's kind of leather that then turns into fruit, but it's a kind of odd sweet fruitiness, that's sort of gooseberries, but stewed gooseberries. It's very, very smooth on the palate. Considering it's only like three and a bit years old, there's quite a good amount on there, to be honest. It's an unusual flavour though. That leatheriness is definitely present. There is a fruitiness. There's a sweetness there, and it's kind of like it's like kids' sweets. So it feels slightly artificial, and it's more like not quite fruit salads. Those kind of rhubarb and custard sweets. It's not quite that, but it's nearly there. It's quite distinctive, to be perfectly honest. It's unusual. When I was at the festival, it was really hit and miss. There were some people that thought it was absolutely fantastic, and other people that really weren't that keen on it. And it was popular to try, I think, because people saw it as Adnams and went, "Oh, we know Adnams, really good beer. Yeah, we'll definitely give that a go." But people were walking away either going, "Actually, yeah, it's very, very good," or "Not too keen on that, not too keen." And I can see why now, because having tried it, it's quite an unusual flavour, this kind of leather stroke, stewed fruit stroke, kind of slightly artificial kids' sweetness. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I kind of like it and don't like it at the same time. I like it because it's unusual. I like it because it's got quite a good sweetness to it. But at the same time, I'm not a big fan. It's a little unbalanced for me. It's not quite marrying well enough to overcome the faults that are in it. yeah, it's just a little unbalanced. There's some good flavours in there, there's some kind of strange flavours, and it's not balanced well enough to kind of marry everything together where you can ride out the low points in it. It's a little bit kind of, that's nice but that's not, but that's nice but that's not. Be very interesting to see what it's like when it gets older. But they are releasing it now. It's only, I think they said 10 barrels worth, so it's a fairly limited release, and that might be an issue in terms of allowing them to be able to have enough stock to have older and older whiskies. I'd be very interested to see what maybe an 8-year-old's like. Maybe not as old as 10, but an 8-year-old could be quite interesting. Whether it's worth the price or not, I would try it first, certainly. I'm not sure to pay 50 quid for a bottle of it, but it's very interesting to try it. And I would certainly give it a go. It's not a bad whiskey. I think it's quite distinctive that you need to try it first to give it a go. But interesting, and I love the beers, and I hope that they manage to make a good fist of this, because it's a decent start. It's not fantastic, but it's a decent start. There's enough in there to go, do you know what, we'll give this a second chance. When it gets a little bit older, if they do it right and they do a good job, it could be pretty good. So yeah, that'll do for that, and I shall see you in the next one. Cheers.